Okay, so this is the second of the two-part series in which we bring our colleagues from the library in to share what they understand are the key things key sources of information that you should use and always look to in developing marketing insight. These are sources of marketing information. And importantly, you should exhaust all of these sources, but not limit yourself to these sources, because there are other sources of information beyond what we'll be looking at today that you might be able to find on your own. But these are the key sources. And Noreen McGuire is our guest co-host today, and she's been at PACE for more than 20 years, right? Or
32.
22
32.
Years? Did you say 32?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time. 32 years. And she's been doing these lectures at my request since 2003.
At least, yeah. Is that when you started?
Well, no, I started before that, but I started making these requests in 2003. And she's she's gotten, if it's possible, she's very good, very, very, very good, but she gets getting better because she's used to doing these lectures to not just for my classes, but for other marketing professors' classes. So she probably can answer any question you might have. I'll just jump in periodically if I think there's something I want to add, but it's probably not going to be much. So I'm going to turn it over to Noreen. Go ahead, Noreen.
Okay, hi. Thank you everyone for being here. This is a whole brand new ball game. I have not 100% mastered the share screen. So if at some point I'm talking and I'm assuming that my screen moved along with me and you guys aren't seeing it change, don't hesitate to speak up. And the same thing goes, if you have a question, you can speak up or you can put it in the chat and I will do my best to answer it. So, you know, as I looked at our question for today, there's really three research pieces that we're going to bring together. And one is understanding that Gen Z target in the dating app field, while the ad and marketing team is doing Tinder. This class, as I understand, is doing Bumble. And so my examples are going to focus on Bumble, but again, regardless of which app or program or service people decided to study, a lot of what I'm going to be showing you works across the board. So the other, you know, understanding not just who Gen Z is right now, but, you know, who the early Gen Zs are right now, who you might want to look at in a couple of years or next fall as your target to be new sign-ons to a particular app. The other part is just understanding the whole teens and dating and young adults and dating part of it, that you will put the specific app into the context of, and what are the apps and other internet usage that characterize your target, and then pulling those pieces together. So that's what we have in store. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Again, I appreciate questions. I don't mind them. You can put them in the chat or you can speak out and I'll try to get to them. So here we go. Okay, you should all be at the library homepage. And since you saw Sarah last week, the library homepage and the research guides where there's a guide about marketing should not be brand new to you. I have sent a handout, which I will do a new share on, to Professor Chagouris. So you guys, if you haven't seen it yet, I only forwarded this to Dr. Chagouris this morning. This will outline a number of the sources and search strategies, as well as some additional sources that I won't necessarily cover today, to give you some leads as you go forward with your own research. So I'm going to go back again, and here we go. So what I decided I was going to do today is first start with a very specific type of search. And one of our tried and true databases, which thankfully, we did have to make some cuts to databases this summer because of budget cuts, but one that I fought hard to protect, and really there wasn't anyone who didn't want to keep it, is called Business Source Premier. Business Source Premier looks at sources across the business and fields. So notice, since I'm at home, I have to authenticate just to go into the database. So I have my username and password ready. And this is the search interface. A lot of the search interfaces, as by now you probably know, look similar. There's a way to combine some searches. There's a way to limit your searches to what kind of materials you like, the dates that you're interested in, etc. But one of the things that Business Source Premier has, if you look over to the right panel, is they have some specific types of searches that you don't have to wade through magazine articles or journal articles to get to. And one of those is an industry profile. While I can tell you that there is no industry profile in this particular database on the dating industry, one of the broader app industries we're interested in is mobile apps. So I did a search in here, and when you run your own search, you'll want to change that to by title, subject, and description. And I ran it on mobile apps and hit enter. Now it shows you that you got 52 results. These particular reports cover all areas of the world. It's not a strictly reverse alphabetical or alphabetical area. I can just tell you that you'll have to go to the second screen of results and then scroll down a bit, and you're not going to look for United States in this case. They've changed their labeling to North America. So it's going to include some numbers for Canada and Mexico, but they separate out. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And over to the right, I'm going to choose the most recent report, which was December of 2019. So I would expect that they're probably not going to do another one until later this year. So once I'm in, I can click on the title, and it's going to give me a rather detailed summary of market definition and what I can expect to find in here. But your best bet for navigating is to go to the PDF full text. And these are market line reports. I'm just moving my bar down to the bottom so I can make sure you guys are seeing this well. And they're pretty long. What I'm going to draw your attention to in here, and I would suggest you not only read the sections that I'm going to draw your attention to, but two that are really good to know about are your competitive landscape, and there's something in here called the 5 forces analysis. Some of you may be familiar with the 5 forces analysis already. It's a concept that comes out of economics, but it's used heavily in marketing, and it takes a look at buyer power, supplier power, new entrants, threat of substitutes, and the degree of rivalry within a particular. So keeping in mind that this is mobile apps in general, it'll set the stage here by saying that, you know, the companies or the players, the buyers are individual consumers and advertisers. Software and IT hardware companies, content publishers are the key suppliers. So then as you go through, I won't go over each of these charts, but start to understand what the relationship of those 5 forces are and what's impacting the industry. And, you know, you guys aren't creating a new mobile app, but this is just to give you some context to the industry that your apps are part of. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, but also the competitive landscape part of this report is very useful to understand what's going on in the apps industry and who the major players are. So I'll keep that brief. I'm going to now go back to the A to Z databases. And the next part that I'm going to cover, notice that we have Business Source Premier, and right under it something called Business Source Ultimate. What Business Source Ultimate is it allows you to search a number of databases that we get from the same provider, so that you're not only searching content in business. And for a topic like dating apps and teens and dating, there's a lot more than the business end to this that you really want to know. You probably want to understand something about the psychology and something about the sociology of dating and app use and internet use. So when you go click on Business Source Ultimate, notice that it says choose databases. On the handout that you, if you haven't seen it already, that you will get, I didn't list all of the ones, but the ones that I recommend you try are Academic Search Premier. That is a multidisciplinary database, so it's across disciplines, not just business. I would definitely put Business Source Premier. Remember, what we just looked at was an industry profile, not all of the articles on a topic. Communication and mass media, of course, social media and internet use falls into that category. And as I go through, we have a lot. I would put newspaper source. Notice that this covers content, full text from more than 40 US and international newspapers. Sometimes, even though they're not studies at universities or businesses of a particular topic, sometimes newspaper sources give you great ideas for another lead or a specific insight that you might miss in one of the other studies. And then APA PsycInfo. This is the Psychological Abstracts database. And last but not least, I'm going to suggest SocIndex. That's Sociological Index, and this includes links out to a lot of full text. So once I've done that, you could, if you wanted, expand to Women's Studies International, but that's a pretty specialized database. So for today, I did not choose that. Once you've selected your databases, you just click on Continue. And I'm going to stop for a second here and see any questions.
I want to just add, while you think about what questions you have for Noreen, marketing people are not psychologists, but they really do practice the application of what we call industrial psychology or consumer psychology. So Noreen is well served and smart about pointing out, don't limit your search to just the business periodicals or the business trade publications. The whole psychology of why someone would buy, use, or try a product. Right now we're talking about dating sites, but it could be anything, is really important. And most of the time, it's going to be a key piece of information you're going to use to sell your boss or your boss's boss or your client on why you're making a recommendation that you are. I will be looking for that for sure. If you look at the brand marketing team plans books, most of them are available to you on the website where I think I've sent you all to go. Most of their plans books are available in PDF. You will note that almost every one of those plans books that go to the insight, base the insight on some form of psychological thread or element. So it's really important you get into the whole psychology of why people use or don't use these services of one kind or another. Some people are adamantly uncomfortable using them. Some are very comfortable using them. Some are on them all the time. So you need to think about, why is that? And who are these people that use them a lot versus hardly at all? Thank you, Noreen.
Okay, right, and I'll add to that, sort of build on that, you know, part of what that marketing team plan has in it is that they don't want just a competitive landscape. They really want to understand what the experience of teens is right now, who they're hoping to then become new customers when they turn to 18, 19. So that's the approach that I'm taking here. So remember, and I'll click on show all, I'm searching across a wide range of multidisciplinary databases. And so I'm going to start, just to give you an idea of what the content is. If I just put in the word dating, right? Anywhere, this is going to search the titles, the subject headings, the full text. came up with 166,000 articles on dating. You'll notice that when you first search in these databases that it ranks them by relevance, which is really a good thing. When you're dealing with 166,000, the relevance is, where does your word appear? Is it in the title? Is it in the abstract? Is it, and notice here, in the official subject headings that have been assigned to this particular article? So those are going to be pushed to the top. When it was published is another important part of how it gets relevance ranked. So you're going to get, if there's something that's really on target and it's new, that's going to push it up a little bit more. So without looking at every single article that I have here, but I do want to look at a few. Here's the first one, is Love Unshackled, identifying. So it's hard to tell exactly, but this is mobile app adoption and online dating. If you want to see more, it's from March 2019, so quite current. You can hover over it. It tells you it's from an academic journal. So this is a study that was done, research was done, the data was looked at, and then it was published in an academic journal. So when you hear peer-reviewed or scholarly journal, that's an academic journal. So it sounds pretty interesting here. I would want to look at this if I was doing this assignment. So once I hovered over this piece of paper with the magnifying glass and I decided I wanted to look at it, I could go right to the PDF full text and look at this article, and it takes me right in. So now I could download it, print it, etc. Now, some of these, when they're in academic journals, may be very esoteric. They may use language or concepts that might be out there, but I would still suggest that you glean them for the information. You guys can see that, right? It's moving with me. You see MIS Quarterly, Love Unshackled?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm just going to check in every now and then to make sure I'm not talking about something you guys can't see, because that has happened.
I'm not asleep. Listen, if I could add one other thing to what Noreen has shared with you, it's that as you find someone who is an author on this topic, or who has been separately quoted on a topic, a smart thing to do is to search for their name to see where else have they either written something or been quoted on the topic, because you may find additional information. So that I can't begin to tell you how important that is in trying to find quickly this information. The faster you find the best sources, the better off you're going to be, and the more time you're going to save.
Absolutely. And there will be cases where you will see certain names coming up over and over again, especially when you start to do searches on the web. Now, I'm going to point out a couple of things here. So notice that the first one came from Business Source Premier. So this one was in the Sociological Index database. I would have missed this if I was in Business Source Premier. And note, this is specifically about, it's not necessarily about teens, but it's about bisexual individuals. One of the things also that's in that plan book is understanding how people whose gender identity, sexual identity, how that impacts their use of a dating app and what would appeal to them. So I would stop and take a look at this. It's from a journal called Sexuality and Culture, and it's quite new. So we're not going to, go into every single one, but as you can see, as we go through, there's a lot of information to be mined from these. And one of the things that I always mention, and Dr. Chiguris usually also backs me up on, is that the more research you do and the more insight you have that sets you apart from the other groups who are doing this research really does help you out in the long run with your team grade. So while it may seem like an awful lot to do, it's really up to you where you want to go with these. So this was from Business Source Premier, this was from Academic Search Premier. So now, I mean, by searching across 5 or 6 databases at once, you can see that there's an awful lot of information out there. You're obviously not going to go to 166,000. So really, after the first 10 or 11 in my initial search, it was kind of exhausted. One of the databases that you're going to frequently find articles or when you, and I'll show an example, I should have probably done that. You'll see a button that says search for article. Let's see. Here, in this case, it happens to say full text finder. Sometimes it says search for item, but we have a database called Sage, which while it is not specifically searchable through Business Source Ultimate, always follow those full text finder links. So notice that even though the databases we were in did not have the full text, there was a full text finder or search for item link that takes you directly to another page and allows you to go into the article in a different database. So I would follow all my leads. That I may say that a lot by the time we're done with this, but it can't be stressed that we have all these helpers in place. So even if you don't see a link right here that says PDF full text, you're going to be able to get a lot of information by following links to others. And sometimes we're not going to have what you need and it's perfect, and then you'll have to get it on interlibrary loan. And Dr. Chagouras, could you remind me to show them where interlibrary loan is at the end of the session?
Perfect. Yep, I won't forget.
Okay, I will. It's just the way it goes these days. So now what am I going to do? I have 166 results. I have ones on dating, but what I'm really interested in is a particular target audience. And I've already been told who that is. It's teens. And so notice I'm going to put in on my second line, which means I'm not only looking for articles that mention dating, but also mention a series of other words. Notice when I type teen and asterisk, that's going to pick up teen, teenage, teenager, teenagers. So by putting the asterisk or wildcard, I've done that. But what are other words for teenagers? Adolescents, right? So adolescence or adolescents, again, I'm going to use that wildcard and I'm going to pick up different. And I'm capitalizing the ors. You don't really have to, but I like to do that so that you can see the relationship. Sometimes teens or adolescents are called young adults. Depending on the database you're in or the journal you're in, young adults might sometimes include slightly older people in the 18 to 24 range, but it's always worth looking. Or what else could we use? While your target that you really want to understand are the teenagers who are getting ready to be college age or 18 and up. You want to understand college student use of dating apps because it's big. And the target that we're actually told is Gen Z. So if you can think of anything else, I've kind of covered my bases, and librarians are good at that. You know, if you can come up with a couple of these things, you're going to start to see others. So once I've put in all those terms that are somewhat synonymous or close to synonymous, I can now rerun my search. And you'll see that there's a huge decrease from 166,000 to a still fairly unmanageable 23,599, okay? But once again, it's gonna pop some things up to the top that it feels are most relevant to the search terms that I put in. Now, one of the things when you start to put in young adults or adolescents or teenagers is there's an awful lot of research out there on dating violence. It's really up to you to decide where you need to do that. They don't want you to rewrite their app, but you should understand what leads to it, what's considered. So, you know, you might want to take a look at some of those before you move through. But again, it's way too much, too big. So I would want to then say, okay, who are the main players that you've already identified? And I, for some reason, have trouble typing Bumble. I have discovered this. So I could say Bumble or Tinder or Match I didn't put match.com. It should match on Match, okay? Or who else do we want to include? Plenty of Fish. I'm just throwing this in here because other groups are doing others. So if they want to look at this video later, they can see theirs represented. Or OK Cupid. Or I know there's more, but I'm just going to put those. There's some pretty big, you know, top ones here. So now on this line, I'm going to take my 23,000 and say, okay, it has to mention one of these very specific apps that I've typed in. And now it's brought it down to a manageable 443. It does not mean that you're going to look at all 443 articles, trust me, but it has at least said, okay, let's talk about app use specifically. And so you can start to see when, like, number one, again, academic journal. So somebody did a study, looked at the results, and it's kind of interesting, understanding people in their social worlds is the context, and you can see the official subject headings. This one was from Sociological Index, so it's a good thing. Again, the next one's from Business Source Premier. Now this one's kind of funny. It says herd mentality. Now, if anybody's done a little bit of basic research yet on on Bumble, you'll know that the person who heads it up, her last name is Hurd. But if you didn't know that, you might miss this, because it actually assigned the subject heading animal herds, which I've never seen it do that. I have a feeling this might not have, someone didn't read the article, because it's really about Wolf Herd's goal is to make Bumble the good housekeeping brand of dating apps. Right now, just by looking at that, because I happen to know her name, I just got a great insight to what separates my app, or at least the mission of my app, from the herd. Okay, so if every little thing that you look at can give you some insight into what is Bumble trying to do that's different from what Tinder's doing, or Grindr's doing, or any number of the other apps. So while oops, sorry about that. While someone else might have looked over that, I thankfully didn't, because it actually gave me one of those little gems that Dr. Shigaris and I are talking about. Each stone you turn over, you could find something new. So again, not going to go through every article, but you can see as I scroll through here that sometimes you're going to get what librarians call false hits. Well, it had all the right words in it, but yeah, you probably don't want to do that one, right? It doesn't. But we have a few more of these rock glaciers and formation that came out in my searches. But you can see that there are others here that I would highly recommend that you look at. Any questions about what I've just covered? I spent some time on it, but I really do think that it's worth demonstrating how a good search can really get you into some helpful databases. Any questions about this? I'll stop for a minute. Nope. Okay. This is the one thing I'm not used to yet in teaching online is, the pause between waiting to ask people if they have any questions or not. That part I have not really gotten that used to. So now we've looked at the mobile app industry. We've looked at a bit about dating and teens, the sociology, psychology, the experiences, etc. So then the next thing we're going to do, I'm just going to close a few of these, is take a look at Bumble itself. Now, we did throw Bumble in here on the team, but again, Bumble in this case, it was just in the context of teenagers and dating, not just the company itself. There's another way, and it's not our recommended end-all way to search, but you may have noticed or even used when you were on the library homepage, this tab called Quick Search. What Quick Search does is it searches across a number of databases, not necessarily those academic databases that we were just in. It might pick up some news stories, some business wires, some other things that are not included by going through Business Search Ultimate. And so if there was a little news story, whether it's a court case or a stock offering or something like that, this is a good way to just, without going to all the different databases. So I put in Bumble and dating, because if I put in Bumble, I'd get bumblebees, even though it's one word. You still got a lot of stuff on bumblebees if you put it in without adding a word like dating. So did you guys all move with me back to the homepage and the quick search?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so now I'm coming up with some things that didn't come up before. And it could be, probably the reason is because, again, they may not be about teenagers, or they may be from a database that is not searchable through that multi-search engine. So in this case, Gale one file. This one here is Feminist Dating App Bumble. That did come up from Communication and Mass Media. So what does that mean? I like that it's my choice a couple of different times. So if you guys know a few things about, and I'm going to click, see here how it has a special view full text link. That's going to take me into another database without losing my search results. And it says that it's an academic article. And you can see that it has the text of the article this way, but you can also download it as a PDF so that you can more easily print it or read it or save it. But so this article is just another way to get to the article. The full text link looks different because Gale is a partner of our quick search vendor. But again, notice this has a kind of heavy duty title. I don't understand this. Anyone else? Gender and affordances. This is a case where you might say, whoa, this is pretty esoteric, and it's got a heavy theoretical background, and it's been, you know, Bumble's been lauded as feminist Tinder. So if you didn't know that, you now know that, okay? So I may not understand all of the stuff about affordances, but by looking through here, I can get a good idea why they decided to do this research and figure out, you know, if they've got the feminism angle, and figure out why they felt this was important research and why a publisher felt this was important research to get done. So even if it sounds a little bit untouchable, because I would have to read the whole thing to understand this word, go for it, okay, and get what you can out of it. Again, it's a very new article. So I'm going to go back to my result list, and so here's another one, infrastructural failures in the feminist dating app Bumble. So this is clearly an area that people are taking on. And so you'll, even though your audience might be younger and might not be thinking of these in terms of feminism, you'll still want to see. There was a lawsuit about auto renewals. So if you didn't know that, you now do. So, here's about dating apps during social distancing. Now, one of the things that the plan book for the ad team, marketing team says is that they're going to assume that we're in a post-COVID, post-social distancing world in a year. So, but you could still understand what that's changing now. So now I've kind of exhausted the really ones that are very much on target. But I also know that I still have a bunch of other articles. This would be a case when you're thinking about news stories that might not have as much weight when they're ranking, but are still important. So here, notice where relevance ranks automatically. I can go over to date newest, and it's going to resort these. Online dating during the pandemic really is the worst. Now, notice that this is the same article. And the indexing is really inconsistent. So I don't know if this appeared twice with two different titles or if it's just bad covering. But the reason why I went this is it's two other things. This is a study. And if you looked at this, you would, I imagine, I guess I don't know that, but if I was doing this assignment, I would look at this and saying, whoa, this sounds great. right? And notice it's 3 times in a row. When you see something like this and they're in news stories and it's 3 times in a row, it's probably just an announcement that the company pushed to what's called a news wire. And these different sources picked it up to let the marketing world know that this study is available and telling them that you can go to this particular website to find it. So you're not, even though it says view full text, this is going to be full text of the news wire, okay, that M2 Press Wire or Business Wire published. It is not going to be the study. So you, again, as you use these databases more and more, you'll begin to see that. But you can, by clicking on one, you can grab the title of the report, and it tells you that it's market.com, marketandresearch.com. You can grab the title of the report and see what you can find out from the publisher of that report just by copying and pasting. And the only reason I take the time to do this, and obviously other people have, right, is to see, here's Allied Market Research, that's just a report. If we go through, here's research and markets. This is the study. And the reason I bring it to you is it sounds great, right? Look over here on select an option for a single user license, $2,500. So oftentimes you get these very enticing links and it looks like it's readily available and it's not. But there's no reason why you couldn't read the description, the table of contents, what's included in there, what are some summary points, what are some of the companies mentioned. It may not end up giving you much new, but you're not going to pay $2,500 and we're not going to be able to get it for you, okay? And they're constantly, the next thing that's going to pop up is they're going to have someone text me and say, do you want to talk about our products? So expect that, but just be aware that that's another type of item that's going to come up through these kinds of searches, and you're not going to be able to get all of them. So, oops, I think I'm back to the earlier. There we go. I'm going to go back to this result list. And again, the next thing I want to point out is this from September of this year. Bumble makes a beeline to markets. And if you're not really sure what that means and you click on it, Bumble is thinking about going public. It is a private company and it's planning to go public early next year. So something just to know about the company and the competitive landscape. And it's estimated to be worth about $6 billion. So I learned something from following up on a short news story. So while it isn't going to give you a lot of insight, I learned something very new and important if this is the company that I'm trying to learn as much as I can about. So that was my second search. Well, really third, right? So I'm going to stop one more time and ask you guys how you're doing and if you have questions so far.
Could you show them, maybe you plan on doing it a little bit more, drill down a bit more in marketresearch.com, or because some of these reports, they're older, not the newest ones, can be found there.
Oh, I didn't, and I think I may have just closed it, but I can go back to it.
Back and spend a little bit more time on that, because I want to make sure they understand there'll be some interesting things there that are available for sale now, but some of the older ones might still be helpful.
Oops. Oh, for some reason I didn't put the right thing in. I gave a, well, I kind of messed up. So let's see if I can go back and find that one, which I don't think I did. I lost my link. But if I type in here, there it is. Okay. And we go to, remember, there's a bunch of companies here that are mentioning it, but the one that is research and markets. I can go there. And so let's see what Dr. Chiguris is referring to. So here's the most recent search. And it's showing you over here that here's a year earlier, right? This is global online dating services market, but it stops at 2024. I don't know if this one is Nope, it's still heavy pricing. But if you go to these sites, you can sometimes find other reports that are older and may still be useful to you. Did you have a particular place you want me to navigate here? Like here's related products, but these are all with a price tag.
Well, we used to have, I guess, marketresearch.com. We still have it, right? But it ends.
We have marketresearch.com, and I'm going to show you guys one example on Gen Z that's in there. Marketresearch.com, which is similar to this, are reports that marketing research companies have made available to college students at no charge. This doesn't happen to be one of them. So we have very limited subject areas that they make reports available. If you're doing something on grocery shopping or pets or school technology, that's a great database, but otherwise it's quite limited. So let me just see where, so I'm going to now go to one of our favorite databases and one that I trust many of you have used already. I'm going to close a few of these so I don't confuse myself. And that database is Statista. So far, Statista, as the name suggests, is a database that includes a lot of statistical data, but it's not like just a bunch of statistics charts. It's got a lot of reports. It's got a lot of graphic data and things that are very useful in it. So you may, as you start to do research, and I'll show you an example by the end of this session, you may start to see that Statista does come up in your Google searches. Always, you know, so if you see something that looks good in Statista, you can go, but I recommend that you always come back to this Statista through the library homepage, because we pay for corporate content and academic content that is not available through the free version that's on the web. So even if you see something good in your Google searches, you can follow it, but ultimately bring yourself back here to look at.
Yeah, let me jump in on that. So
Please.
some students will find something in Statista online and stop there. The ones that get the best grades go back into the library because your tuition's paying for it. Not only are you paying for Noreen's time today, and I think you're probably paying a lot for it, but you're paying for all these subscriptions to these databases. And when you go in, you'll find that there are things for the same study that you found online through the free version. When you go through PACE, you'll find additional information you can't get online.
Right.
That will not be made available to people for free, but because PACE pays for it, you'll get a lot more, not always, but most of the time, a lot more information.
Right. And there's other information that you'll be linked out to when you do a search here that your Google search isn't going to put you right into. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Statista. Presuming you guys all see the global #1 data platform. Since I haven't really moved off of the web much, I shouldn't have a lot of problems with my demo, but just making sure. So let's start with the most specific part of our search, and that is our particular brand or app, and that's Bumble. So as soon as I put Bumble in, notice what pops to the top. It says that there's 114 search results that include Bumble, and the ones that came up at the top are, so what is the user ratio by gender, user ratio by how often they use it, rate of Bumble user activity. So now, you know, and assume if they have the Bumble user activity that they probably have it for the other apps. So let's just say I'm interested in Bumble usage reach by age group. This is 2020, so it's very new. And I can start to look at, and now notice reach isn't saying how many people use it, but what percentage of a particular age group are using a particular app, okay? So right now, 18 to 29-year-olds, 13% of them are using the app, 10% of 30 to 44-year-olds, et cetera. So as we go down here and we see that these are specifically on Bumble. You can see below that there's, well, we happen to be sent to some stuff on Poland, so ignore those links below. Sometimes they have some good links, but notice that it tells you that this information came from a Morning Consult national tracking poll. So when you see something like that, you can assume that there's going to be data on other, it's on in the category social media and user generated content, that there's going to be more on the other groups. So you can regularly go back and look at what else is there, specifically on Bumble and their numbers. Or you can go in and you can do a new search. And one of the things that, you know, we're interested in general is about online dating. Now, remember when we were in Business Source Premier and looked at I had already gone through their industry reports, and I'd gone through industry reports in Passport, which I'm not going to look at today because they don't have an industry report on online dating or dating apps or dating services. So, but here, when you look at it, there's a couple of things that grab my attention. What is a dossier? It tells you that an online dating in the United States dossier, what these are is they take all the statistics that they have and they put them all into a single document, 94 pages, and you can either open this up as a PowerPoint or as a PDF. You can download it and then go through each of these, and here's what's included in there. Instead of going to each link in the Statista database. So when we're in there, notice then there's something called digital markets, and this has a different indicator. It's got this green. So the dossier is a collection of statistics. The green tells you that it's actually an expert tool. It's got some consumer market tools. I have never seen these before, and I actually only came across it this morning, so that's how new it is. So I'm going to actually work on looking at it. You may be able to actually take a particular age group and a particular dating app and start to look at usage. But right now it says that it's blocked, so I couldn't go ahead and use it. I wished I could, but then there's also topics that, so here's online dating in the United States. Now, of course, online dating and apps, you know, cross over depending on whether you're using a phone, but notice it says here, statistics on the topic, leading dating apps and platforms. So while our assignment is looking at the use of apps on phones primarily, this includes statistics that cross over both of those. And so it is a dossier, and it says that we can go to the report. It's got a slightly different focus. But again, another way to go in. And as you might, I forgot to show you, is down at the bottom, there was a whole bunch of, I'm going to go back, graphic descriptions of things that are in there. And by scrolling down to the bottom, it brought me to something called an interesting Statista report. So I'm going to click on this, and this is a dating services report. And it's a segment report, so I can choose, you know, what I want. And not just this isn't just a collection. It's not just a collection of statistics. It's an actual report that looks at dating services are generally characterized by functionality, and it's a search for life partners, flirts, or sexual partners. And portals and apps are incorporated in this examination. So when I'm in here, I click to download it. I can just go down, I'm in Chrome, and open up this report. I now have a 50-page analysis on dating services. Okay, now it is a global report, so some of it may take you out of the United States, but you could still, you know, zero in on United States. There may even be a place where you can tell it, just give me the part on the, oh, well, here's forecast in millions in the US. So it looks like a lot of what we have here. Here's China. So just skip the ones that are not about the US and grab what you can, okay? So again, you can make a note on your paper, or if you're taking notes, that to go into Statista and look for the e-services report on dating services, as well as the online dating dossier. There's so much information in here, whether it's on an individual company, on a industry, or on a service industry. So I covered an awful lot on that, but I'm not quite finished yet with Statista. And that is because there's another part of your assignment, which is a little bit tougher to get at. And that is, at least for the ad team, marketing team, what is the name now, Dr. Shigoris? Is it ad team still, or?
People call it the ad team, but it's officially the brand marketing team.
That's what I thought. Okay, so the brand marketing team's, case specifically wants to understand, where are the teenagers who are going to become the 18 and 19-year-olds and even the 20s and 21s? What apps are they using? What kinds of things are they using apps for? Where can we reach them? What are their interests? And Statista, if you start to search on articles in some of the other databases, and I'm not going to tell you not to because there's gems, but you're going to have to look a lot closer for the good stuff when you start to look at apps, unless you identify specific apps or companies that you want to do articles on teenagers or young adults and how they use those apps. But I can go into something like Statista and just put in, okay, teenagers and internet, or I could put in teenagers and apps. And when I do that, I come up with a report. This is a dossier, but then there's also a topic on internet usage of teenagers in the United States. So this is going to start giving me some idea of what students are doing online, how they're accessing smartphone access, their social media uses, which platforms they're using. And so reach of social media used by US teens. So this is 2019, which is quite new data, as 2020 isn't finished yet. Most used platforms by teens by age group. So again, there isn't a quick way to do all of this. You guys have to be little detectives, like not little detectives. I shouldn't say little, you guys have to be detectives, which, I'm in this field because I like this kind of thing. But, again, split up the work in your teams, or, assign different databases to different people, because it's definitely worth going through and finding the gems. So there's still a few things then, as I started going through here, that I wasn't finding in my searches. But before I go on to that, any questions from all of you? I think you've already got the idea that there's a lot of places that some of you may not have known about before we started. I'm hoping that's the case. So there are times while, Dr. Shigoris and any librarian and really any professor is going to say, you can't just use Google, but there are times that Google can get you to specific information that you're not finding. Now, remember, Bumble is a private company, and so we don't have a whole lot of information from them about who their users are. We have some information from surveys that Statista did, but then when I looked at some of the fine-tuned details, and this is another important heads up, sometimes when you look at the details, the use by age was only for people who were using Android apps. It doesn't say Android apps in the title of a particular study, but it doesn't say that they're using ones that they got from the Apple Store. It's just an Android app. So, or Android users who report certain behaviors or app usage. So always be aware of the fine print. So in this case, let's say one of the things I noticed I still don't really have is, who are the people who are really using Bumble, right? Can I get a better profile? I have some idea of the basic demographics by age and by user group, but, and here notice when I put in Bumble app demographics right up at the top, jumps to Statista. So we just saw this, and in fact, they added these over the weekend. When I was first prepping for this class, some of this stuff wasn't even in there. So you're going to see, and it pushes to the front. This Business of Apps company probably paid to have this pushed up when we're looking for demographics of someone else. There's some more Statista, there's dating site reviews, expanded ramblings, Bumble statistics and facts. It's really up to you when you're in Google how much you think you can gain. Blogs are more and more really valued place to find information on how people who have followers are reviewing or viewing particular social media sites or programs. So it's really up to you what you want to do. But the one that I was struck by is this one, Synthesio, and I don't really know who Synthesio are, but you can see here it says the age demographic talking about Bumble is skewed toward 25 and 34-year-olds.
Synthesio has hired a number of our recent graduates, by the way.
Okay, and I've heard of Ipsos company, so I started to look at that. So, this didn't push up to the top, but this is an extraordinary free resource. If you're looking for what does the online landscape look like for Bumble. Now, I'm guessing that Synthesio put this out because they want other apps and to take a look at this and say, you can tell me all of this about mine, right? So here's online sentiment towards Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. Here's your age breakdown, talking about Bumble. So they're taking a look at stuff that's very, very hard for us as individuals to get a hold of. What people like and dislike of Bumble fans.
So let me explain while we're at it. There'll be a little bit longer lecture later in the semester on the topic. Synthesio, which I have said has hired some of our recent grads, is among a handful of companies, actually a couple of handfuls of companies that claim to monitor sentiment, consumer sentiment. And what they do is they pretty much scrape, download, capture conversations online, whether they be in Twitter or Facebook or one of the other social media platforms, or blogs and responses to blogs. Some do have more sources than others. Some go back further in time than others. You can imagine the enormity of trying to capture all this information and store it and then serve it up. So why does Synthesio give us some of this information for free? Because what they give you for free, what all these monitoring companies give you for free, is an interesting thing to start with, but you never really get at the heart of what is available unless you pay for a subscription. And then if you pay for a subscription, then they give you a lot more information. And this is their way of kind of teasing you a little bit, or letting you know that they do have some of this information. If you want more of it, more in depth, further back in time, then you pay some kind of a subscription fee. That's how they make their money.
Right, and down at the bottom, but again, it's worth it. In this case, this is really a great find, because I've got insight, even if I don't scratch the surface, as they say, of what customer intelligence platforms can provide. I just got a bunch of stuff I'm not going to get from journal articles. So there are times that Google can lead you, and again, it takes some discernment and care in how you go about it. But this is going to give you an idea who your particular brand app, who they're listening to, what events they like, what other media they're looking at, reading, etc. Okay. So I think that this is well worth your time. So the last thing I promised, Dr. Chiguris, I would mention, and we mentioned at the beginning of class, is that New York Public Library, as New York students, whether you're based in Pleasantville or based in New York City, anyone who lives or goes to school in New York can get a free library card. So right now, since the libraries aren't open, it's not like you have to go to the library and apply and get a a physical library card. They have an app called Simply E app, and it took me 2 minutes to get it. Okay, so I had to go to the Apple Store on my iPhone. I had to download the app. I had to fill in some information. And once I filled in that, and it's a little confusing because the app kind of makes it look like you're only going to have access to ebooks, but that's not the case. When you get through the whole process, they will assign you an individual barcode, and then you choose a PIN for that barcode. And once you've done that, you have access back here to anything that New York Public Library has on remote access. So then they list a number of the databases where you can find full text articles. And one of the databases that we did have to cut during, and we're hoping that it's temporary, ProQuest Research Library is very similar to Academic Search Premier in that it covers a broad range of news, academic, and trade journals across a wide range of disciplines. But it is not, 100% the same as Academic Search Premier. So if you get your New York Public Library barcode and and you assign your PIN, you can then go in here and use it online. So it has to have a little house by it for it to be one of the ones that you can use online. And that's what these, even though it doesn't say it there is a whole list separating out which ones are online, and you can go ahead and do that.
Noreen, could you please explain again the process for the students getting a barcode through the?
Okay, yeah. And I don't have mine, or I would.
Excuse
I
me.
left it. But so I'm going to go back to the link. So if you go to newyorkpubliclibrary.org, one of the top choices you have is get a library card. So if you,
Professor, I don't think we see the screen.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you for saying that. I changed out of, so that's really good. Thank you. I had a feeling, is that better?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Thank you for telling me. That's what I was counting on. Great. And it didn't even dawn on me. So when I went to newyorkpubliclibrary.org, I clicked on the link for Get a Library Card. And it tells you that, because so many of the actual branches are closed, you can't get a real, card, but you can get a library card through the Simply E app. And it provides a link where it can take you right out. So if you were looking at this on your phone, it would take you right to the Apple Store or the Android, Google Play, whatever the store is. And so once you have that, it'll ask you for your information. It doesn't ask you for financial information. It just asks you for your address and phone number, etc. And once you've gone through that process, it will assign you a barcode and ask you to create a PIN. So then when you're actually on the site and trying to go into a database, it will prompt you. So here's the remote access to collections and services. And you can, here's A to Z list of articles and databases. It says here that you need a card and your PIN. And as you're going through, one of the things you can do is you could say, okay, show me anything that I might want to use for business. And under location, I can ask it to show me what can I reach from outside the library. Did that switch over for you guys so you can see this limiter?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we chose the A to Z list for articles and databases, and I put business outside the library. I click on find, and it will come up with a list of any of the things that, and this may be helpful for you in other classes, okay? And here's a list of all of the things. Now, it's interesting that this is everything. It didn't just bring up business, unless they feel that all of these are things where, well, I guess actually, yeah, if you're interested in 19th century business, that's a pretty wide net they threw out there. All of these might have something on business, though it looks a little bit. Now, when you see something like this, that says,
Maureen?
Yep.
I want to make, see that where it says advertising, read books online, you just scroll past it. Keep going back down.
Yeah, so what it's telling me is that this has not done its job, because when it says the advertising read books online, notice it doesn't have the blue, the house next to it. If it has one of these, then that means it's available anywhere. But if it has the lion, it's only accessible at certain libraries, and you can click on more info. So my limit for some reason did not work. So I'm going to say, okay, business outside the library, available. Oh, here, at home with the library card. I forgot to switch that. Okay. It's not available everywhere. So this should be a more reasonable search. And that will tell you what I can access from home. Okay.
But some of the libraries have opened up,
Yes, they have.
and they may have more limited hours,
Yes.
but they have opened up, and you can dispatch one of your team members to, once you have a specific piece of information or study you want to get a copy of, and if it's not available online, but you know it's at the library, it's worth doing.
Right. So if I hadn't sat at home with a library card, but I want to know what's available only at the library in business, guess you know, here you would need to know which particular, I'll say all branch, but then you miss some of the big research libraries. So I would keep this one at all. And I said business, and I want to go find out which ones are only at the library. So what am I missing if I restrict myself to at home? And now IBIS World is a great database. Okay, IBIS World has some great marketing reports. I'm not sure if you will need more than what you have, but notice that it says the terms of access. There is no downloading, even at the library. You can print individual sections of reports, but you know, so their contract with this particular database, which is a marketing industry research database, does limit how you can use it. But you can see there's quite a few things that you can use, and it'll tell you which library. So let's just say you were interested in Factiva. This should tell me. Okay, yeah, so it tells you that this is at the Business Center at SNFL, which I don't know what that means.
Stavros Niarchos, I think, hit it. I bet you it's Stavros Niarchos.
What, SNFL?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Is the one Midtown? Where? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Midtown. Good.
Yeah, they changed the name of it, but yeah. Okay. So, again, there's a lot of stuff on this page. We like to make sure that you know that it's there if you feel like going the extra mile.
It's closed. This one's physically closed. Interesting. They have the hours and the days all closed, but I guess the only thing you can do is get it online, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, please know only a portion of their first floor is open to the public for limited service as part of the gradual reopening plan. So yeah, so you would have to see, it might be worth a call to see if they would be able to, you know, what they could do for you.
What kind of identification do our students need to prove that they have access to the New York Public Library system?
Well, I think that, you know, again, you should apply for that library card before, because if you have, then I have the Simply E app. All I have to do is pull it up and they're going to see that I have a barcode and a PIN and that I've applied for that card. And I think that is all they're going to need. But again, I don't know. So I didn't study the whole page, but we can probably hear somewhere it will tell you what's required to get in. But I have a feeling that this, okay, so this is part of our gradual reopening. But I'd have to look a little closer, and I can do that and let you know.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I will research that. What do you need to get in? And I'm guessing it's your library card, but they may require some kind of photo ID. I'm sure, you know, your PACE ID would help them know that you're PACE in New York State. So I'll get back to you on that. So I think I've covered everything. Oh, I'm going to go back one more time. I'm going to do a new share.
You're going to talk about interlibrary loan.
Yes,
and also
yes.
ad spending summary, those two things.
Oh, you want me to add? Okay, yeah. So add dollar summary I sent you. So let's go to that. Part of, I'm doing a new share. One of the databases that we have, and you'll notice when I go back to the handout that I sent out, add dollar summary is one of the few places where you can get companies at varying levels, private, public, whatever, where Cantor Media has done their best to estimate what kind of spending each of these companies, either a specific company or companies within an industry. So this is the page that has the industry code for dating services as well as online dating, right? And you can see, let me make this just a little bigger. This is one of the hardest to read things, even if you were in the library, and you will have to be in the library to actually use this tool, which is why I saved this page. There's like 700 pages in here. I saved this page for all of you. So what you can do is you can see here's a number of sites that are listed, whether it's the mobile app or online access. So they've given them to you differently, right? And here's Bumble's mobile app. And I'm just going to move my share screen up here, and it will take you through 11 measured media outlets and tell you where they put their media dollars in 2018. We don't have 2019 yet. Ordinarily, we would get 2019 in January, but I think we're going to have to skip a year. But this is going to at least give you a good idea now where the advertising for each of these apps and services is taking place. So that's the other handout that I've given you. And I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to go back to the handout that you should all get, either, I don't know if it's going to be through Blackboard or an email. And this covers a lot of the things, not every single search or every single angle that I took through the class, and it adds a couple of other databases in case you want to poke into them. But the main things that I covered are in here. But in addition, my colleague Sarah and I did some searches on Google, because you really want to understand who Gen Z is. And more than just Gen Z's dating behavior or dating interests, you really want to know what's in their heads and hearts. What are the brands that they love? You're trying to figure out where to reach them and how to reach them, right? So these are studies that were done. This one was by Morning Consult. Do you remember that I showed you that all that survey in Statista was Morning Consult? And here is a study by them on Gen Z's most loved brands. And what is it they want? They want brands to know that they know who they are. And then we talked about the marketresearch.com academic database. We only have this database through December, but you guys should be done by then. And I linked to a report in there that is looking at trends in patterns and spending in Gen Z. So we did this part for you. It doesn't mean that these are all of the good reports and studies out there. Pew Research happens to be a great place to go for any kind of social research and technology use research. So we've given you some good starting places, and it's up to you where else you want to go after that. Any questions about that? I'm running out of time, right?
Just a brief cover into
The library. I know. That's where I'm going. Do share. Gonna go back to I'm going to go back to the library homepage. And notice when I got on the library homepage, there's this nice little pop-up that comes up. A lot of the reference that we're doing right now is online, in the moment reference. So anytime you go to the library homepage, you'll get this library, ask a librarian chat pop-up. So I'm going to say no thanks for now. But also, if you go to Ask a Librarian, there's a form where you can email us a question or set up a consultation. I'm going to encourage you, as you're working through this assignment, if you're doing Simmons and MRI, that you contact my colleague Sarah, who presented to you last week. If you're working on some of the kinds of things that I've shown you, I would say email me first if you have a question or wanted a reminder of something I talked about or aren't finding what you're looking for. My name and email are on that handout. So, you know, when we do a class, that extends to supporting the class when you have questions, because you might go to Ask a Librarian or chat and they might not know as much about this stuff as Sarah and I do. So please use us. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is I talked about interlibrary loan before. Interlibrary loan is when you first go in here. Interlibrary loan is when you come across an article in a database and you click on that full text finder or that search for item link and it comes up empty. It's going to say Payson, you know, Pleasantville and New York students order this through interlibrary loan. Interlibrary loan, it will put the information about that article right from the database into a form, and you hit submit once you've set up the account, and it will get you right in. So what you'll have to do is when you click on ILLiad login the first time, it will ask you, did it switch over with me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I'm in here now, but if I had requested an article, you're going to be brought in here. And since you don't have active accounts yet, it'll ask you to fill out a simple form. And after that, it's going to bring you right in here where you can keep track of all of the requests. It will send you articles. I haven't gotten anything in a couple of months, but once you put in that request, most articles that you're interested in, you're going to have within 24 to 48 hours, and sometimes less than 24 hours. Our interlibrary loan people are working around the clock. That's one of the things now that people are working from home. They're not just working from 9 to 5. So there may be a slowdown on weekends, but once you put that request in, you'll get an email saying, okay, this article's available. You're going to go into your ILLiad account, which there's going to be a link in the email. You're going to go in, you're going to sign in, you're going to go over here, get your electronically received articles and be able to read them and download them from there. It may sound like a lot of work, but the setup takes a couple of minutes. And after that, when you're in a database and it says request on interlibrary loan, you click that link, it fills it in for you, you hit submit and you wait for it. And that's that, it, you know, and so going back to one of the things, I'll put this so I can see you guys, since I'm going to stop my share here. One of the things that is great about interlibrary loan, and we already hinted at this before, is everybody has all the articles, right? Let's say you're all equal researchers, all of your teams have covered every single thing that's available in the databases that we've looked at. But someone else's team got an interlibrary loan designee and they requested 4 or 5 articles that the rest of you didn't feel like signing up for an interlibrary loan account and request. And all of a sudden they've got some gems and they're going to impress Dr. Shigoris, right?
Correct.
See, I know him.
Correct. Here's the thing, and I'll make a few more comments, but when you create your creative strategy, it's going to have to be based upon research. Some primary research, but a lot of secondary research. You're going to have to convince me that the insight that you found is worthy of developing a message against. So you're going to have to prove to me that the insight you found is actually real and it's valid. And that'll be my judgment as to if I think it's real or valid. That's what I do. How are you going to prove it? You're going to prove it with research. And the more research you present to me that specifically supports your insight, the more likely I'm going to accept your insight and then your message. And then all the creative things that you're going to pull together to deliver that message, your organizing idea and so on. If you don't sell me on the creative strategy, nothing you do after that is going to work. Your entire grade really depends upon how well, when you think about it for the campaign project, how well can you sell me on your insight? And that's based upon how well do you find the information that presents something refreshing and new and different and makes me believe that we can convince people to use this dating site, that you can convince people and the target audience to use the dating site. It's not enough for you to say that this is what we think the insight is. I'm going to be looking for where you're getting it from. Now, how you source this information is also important. You just can't say Statista or Ad Age, because statistic creates nothing. It draws upon other sources of information. You need to get to Statista and show where they're getting their information from. They will tell you where they're getting their information from. That's the source. You could say the source is X, Y, and Z from Statista. That's fine. If you just say Statista, that's not fine.
Right.
If you
Like it
say,
might say-
right? If you,
The Morning Consult Survey, April 2020, and what the name of the table or dossier that you used was.
correct. If you say the source is Ad Age, no, Ad Age is not a source. Ad Age reports on research or quotes experts. The source is Mr. or Ms. Expert as found in an Ad Age article dated such and such, page such and such. You need to be that specific because I need to be able to see it. We only have a few more minutes, but let me just make a couple of points. One is often you'll find the same article in two different sources of information. And why would that be? One might just have the abstract. The other might have the full article. So never give up and just accept just the abstract. Look for the full article. What's the difference? The full article has everything. The abstract just has a 3 or 4 sentence summary. A couple other things I think you need to learn and know, and because Noreen took up a lot of time today because she had a lot to share with you, and she did a great job, by the way. Thank you, Noreen. But when you
Too much time?
start, what's that?
Did I take too much time?
No, not at all, not at all. You were full of lots of wisdom today, as you always are. When you are looking for information and you pull up a search and there's just too many results, you have to narrow it. How do you best narrow? Well, you can look for the more recent information, the more recent sources. Or sometimes if you have a keyword like dating site or Bumble, maybe you limit the sources to the titles of articles in which Bumble appeared in the article. But you don't want it to get mixed up with bumblebees, so you also include dating sites in the abstract or in the text of the article in order to remove bumblebees or bumblebee tuna and that sort of stuff. You need to narrow the range of results. And that's one way, those are ways you do it. I don't have anything else, Noreen, other than I want everyone stay on for just a minute. I want to excuse Noreen. I need just a minute of announcements to make, but Noreen, thank you very much. I don't know how to do that applause. Well, here's that applause thing. All right, there's the applause thing. Thank you, Noreen. I appreciate your work and all you did for us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And again, my name is on there. Email me if you have questions. I'm going to leave you to your announcements. Bye.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I'm going to be brief. I know everybody's got other classes and places to go. Again, as I always say, make sure you stay with me for the entire course and don't drop off usually too soon, because I do have important announcements to make. One is I don't, as you saw in my email, I don't keep reminding students when things are due, because I don't think that's my job. I don't think it's my job. My job is to put it in the syllabus or put it in the documents. A lot of you, most of you, fortunately, submitted your personal branding links on time, and bravo to that. Those of you who missed are kind of telling me maybe you're not reading the material that you should be reading. I can't read it to you. I can't force you to read it. It's up to you. I'm just going to ask you to please make sure you stay up to date and ask me any questions you want about anything, so that basically you're up to speed.